That's right, yeah. Not that.
Got my water.
So they have an appointment with the.
How's your house going?
Sure.
Closing in the morning at 9. Yeah, I went to get the bank check for the closing today. And
Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and call to order the public hearing for the planning board for the two ordinance. One is an ordinance amendment, and the other one is an amendment to an ordinance. So one is to the overall book of ordinances. The other one is to a specific floodplain management ordinance as the updates to that. So the first item for discussion is the updates to the land use ordinance, which is the rules required by LD 2003. Is the state law that was passed requires us to make certain updates around affordable housing. We've met several times and had several discussions around these updates. And so there are one new section or two new sections being added, as well as a few minor updates to a few other sections in the ordinance. And so I'll go ahead and
Can you explain
Open the
what
floor.
LD 2003 means?
so
At a
LD,
specific time, because I had owned my property since 1990. That's why I'm concerned if it was dealing directly with my property.
no, LD
They
2,
allowed more expansion if the family could fit another house on there or whatever.
yep. So LD 2003 was a law that was passed by the state legislature. It's specifically designed to increase affordable housing offerings. And so it looks at doing that through two ways. One is affordable housing developments. And so there's a section added in around housing developments and certain density allowances. And then the second is around accessory dwelling units. And so it's clarifying and allowing accessory dwelling units.
Accessory dwelling units are trailers.
Not necessarily. So accessory dwelling units are, can be adding on to your home, your existing property, create, say, like a mother-in-law apartment, putting an apartment like you have over your garage, over a garage or in an attic, putting a separate apartment in a space like that, or it can be adding a new building to the property. And so there are certain limitations around that. And so what we did is when we met with Southern Maine Planning and Development, they had actually created most of these ordinance updates to be in line with the law. And then we made some changes to those based on kind of how we saw. So there's some pieces that we were able to change that aren't in the law around size of accessory dwelling units. So the state law doesn't have a minimum requirement. We've set a minimum. So as to prevent like tiny homes. But it's sets a limit at 410 square feet. But it also can't be greater than 800 square feet. So,
That's 40 by 100.
40, no,
40 by 10.
40 by 20 would be 800 square feet, right? Yeah.
So it's 40 by 10. 40 feet by 10 feet.
40 feet by 10 feet would be the minimum. Right.
But
Right.
But they would have, they don't have to have foundations, because our,
Yep. So all that's in the paper. I don't know if you were able to grab one, but it goes over requiring a frost wall, things like that are in there that yeah. So it says on the 1, 2, 3, fourth page at the very top says ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units, not located in the principal dwelling, shall be placed on a foundation that meets the requirements in the Parsonsfield Ordinance, Article 2, Section 7L, around foundations. So it does require a foundation.
Our restrictions call for foundation, only one home, has to be built, can't be a trailer.
Can I say something?
I
No
don't,
trailers are allowed on our property, on those 5 lots.
I don't understand.
I think I understand where you're coming from. You already have some requirements because you live in a development, right? You
Not a
have-
development, no.
Not a development, it's like subdivision, you have requirements, or you have like already like things that you can't do. Right.
Is it an
So those-
HOA?
Those hold, okay?
If they've changed them all by letting them add on, so they can.
Not according to LD 2003. You're right, isn't that true, Aaron, that
Right.
your subdivision doesn't allow you to do this, that is the way it is.
Yeah, this does not supersede any subdivision declarations.
Not to worry.
Yeah,
Supposed to be one principal home.
yeah. Yeah, this does not change. So if you live in a subdivision, so I also live in a subdivision that has that similar requirement where it's a single residence per lot. This does not change anything for us. Because that declaration still exists.
But it does change things,
Yeah, so it goes over the sizes that are required. And so there's you have to have a certain size lot in order to have an accessory dwelling unit. And then and then there are certain allowances if you don't have a residence on that lot now, you can add actually more dwelling units than just adding on one. And so it does kind of go through the different ways of doing, or the different allowances that are there. But again, this is only allowing this activity to happen. It's not a requirement that you have to have an accessory dwelling unit. This is just saying that if you wanted to put a mother-in-law apartment on, that you would have the ability to do so, which you actually have today. This is just putting firmer rules around it and making sure it's happening in the right places. Yeah, so that's what, yeah. Yep.
Does that have to be a full foundation? When you say foundation?
Not 100% familiar with the foundation laws, but it's whatever is in our ordinances currently. So I think it allows for frost walls
Yeah.
in some instances. So, but
It doesn't have to be a full.
it's no more or less restrictive than the rules today. But it just requires that if it's not part of the foundation that exists today, if say you want to build a secondary unit, that you have to put it on a foundation. So that you're not just throwing up a shed and renting it to somebody, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yep. So the piece on the number of accessory dwelling units is the 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down on that first page. That's all new, and it just kind of goes over no more than 2 dwelling units shall be allowed on a parcel unless the minimum lot size per home can be met. And then in village and village residential, up to 4 homes may be allowed on vacant land, provided that the lot can meet the minimum lot size. And so that's where the numbers come into it in terms of, and then there's also parking for the access for the affordable housing. That's was part of the state law, that requirement. And the affordable housing development part comes into play because we have a small stretch in the town that falls into the census designated places as growth opportunity. And so it's on 25, kind of north of 25, over where the gravel pit is. Kind of that area is, on the census, is designated as a potential growth area. And so that's why that section came into play for us.
What gravel pit?
Is Dwight Mills, with bus garage. Yeah, that area. But on the other side of the road. Between that and the river. Any other questions on these updates that are being made to comply with LD 2003? And so the reason that this is quick turn is because we have to have these ordinances approved by July 1st. So we have been working on these for, feels like 3 years. I think it's been a little over a year. And so we've met several times with planning and Southern Maine Planning Development. They came in, and we met with him and kind of walked through this. So these are sort of on par with what's happening around the area as well.
Public meeting you've had on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed it in planning board meetings, so if you're not paying attention to planning board meetings, the excitement that is, you might have missed it, but yeah, this is the first public hearing we've had on these.
Could you please explain what, sorry, I'm assuming R means
Residential.
residential.
Yep.
Is LPI?
Where are we?
I'm just at one table for the number 18, LPI. I just can't remember.
Oh, so that's an existing table that's from our,
I remember what the abbreviations stand for, because I forgot.
Licensed plumbing inspection.
licensed plumbing inspection?
I remember it.
Oh,
It has to be approved by the town licensed plumber inspector.
And that's
19.
for parking lots?
no, there's a star border there. It's not on my page 19.
I do see parking
Other-
facilities as one of the things that are listed. Just trying to understand what.
Yeah, so what the change to that table, the only change to that table is down at the bottom where it says all shoreland performance standards shall apply to ADUs, 2 to 4 houses. That's the only change to that table. None of the content of that table changed. It's just that asterisk was added to the bottom, just saying that any current shoreland, this doesn't supersede any shoreland zoning regulations.
Homestead affect any of the decisions that are made?
Homestead?
Yeah, my land is where I am is homestead.
That's
No.
a tax rate.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I thought that was guaranteed.
It is.
Yeah, this has no impact on,
It is.
this has no impact on homestead. Yeah, that's a tax break that you receive from the town gets money from the state for homestead. And then that money is dispersed to everyone.
Can I
Yeah.
just say that, I've been sitting in on the planning board meetings as they've been discussing this LD 2003. I've also attended other meetings in other towns, about this. And these guys have done a lot of work on this, and if it doesn't get voted in as they've written it, it reverts to state statute and becomes law July 1st, no matter what. And they've done a great job, I think, of making it specific to our town and ensuring that we kind of keep our rural character where we can. And I'm just in favor of all of it, so.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? Okay. So the next set is around the floodplain management ordinance. So the town has a floodplain management ordinance in place currently. It has been in place since 2000. 2000 or 2001?
2000 it's signed in here.
2000 it's signed, okay.
6 of 2000.
And so what the updates are to the floodplain management ordinance, there's a full list. And I think you printed that out for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what this is this is a list of all the changes that have happened to this ordinance on the state level since 2002. And so they've made annual changes to this. And so they actually did this work for us. The state had two people assigned to do this for the entire state, and they came in and they looked at everybody's current floodplain management ordinance, and they said, you know, what has or has not been updated. They made those updates, and then they sent everybody the draft. And the floodplain management ordinance is required so that citizens of the town can get flood insurance. So those that are required to, that live in floodplains can get flood insurance. So without a up-to-date floodplain management ordinance, nobody's floodplain or flood insurance would be valid. All those policies would be canceled. So obviously it's very important. We don't have obviously a ton of floodplain area in the town, but most of it's focused around the river. And so there are several updates. A lot of them are relatively simple, where it's updating the law number from, you know, the very first example from 2002 is they updated it from 1334 to 1344 was the, you know, the code, the state statute.
I have an issue with the floodplain program.
Okay.
I have 35 years' experience. Where I live, it would be hard to get in the event of a fire. So I have a seasonal pond that I've had for many years.
Yep.
Through all this flooding, I've had an ocean of water come, and with that took the septic pollution, affected the river, the small pond at the junction of Elm and Penn Dexter,
Yep.
went down through mine. The flooding breached my pond that you could fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool with that pond.
Okay.
And that would be what I would use if there was a fire. And that was important to me. Now, through all the ditching they did on the sides of the roads, and all these, they must have made wells or something, and got rid of wet spots that were on Penn Dexter and Elm Street, in helping other people who are gonna build or whatever. They must have done wells to alleviate all the water everywhere else. So now they have, my pond is virtually down to the bottom.
Well, I know that, so two things with that. One is, I don't believe that would be pertinent to what we're talking about, just because I doubt that, that area is not included in the floodplain maps that I've seen. And then secondarily, I know that they put in the culvert that goes under Penn Dexter to alleviate the water that
They
was,
made it bigger.
well, there was water on the other side of the road that was piling up in that person's yard, and now it is no longer.
500 feet by 1,500 feet, an ocean. And it took the septic too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would certainly suggest you talk to code enforcement if you have an issue with something that happened. It's not a planning board issue. Like we have nothing to do with any of that piece that goes in.
But whatever they did, doing this ditching and whatever they did with all the work that they did, there were no easements on my property. They were concerned about water in the back of the lot next, across the street from me, Palmy Hill, and it's higher.
Right.
So they were concerned about flooding. I gave them permission to come across to alleviate that, so they did that.
Okay.
But they put the pavement ended right there where and they dug a hole 5 feet deep. And you can't see it if you're coming from one end to the other. So I put a couple of stones from my wall. I have a stone wall along that road.
Okay,
In front of that, so it would deter them from going around, because there's no way they could see, because there's fiddleheads growing there, there's natural things that are growing there, and right in front of it.
okay,
And the pavement is here, and the ditching is right there.
yep,
And the deer crossing over have loosened the stones. So that eventually it's just, and if a car goes in there, because they can't see that hole, they'll end up in the watch.
okay. So the ditching that was done and the paving that was done on Elm and on
Well, this was 10
160,
years ago, but they improved it. But if you got a heavy truck there on the corner of, right on the corner,
right, but what I'm saying is if you have a concern over how something was handled, that was main DOT would be the people to go to. So they were the ones that did all the ditching, they're the ones that did the
well,
paving.
I'm not talking about now, this was before. This was
Okay.
the DOT that did that. This was as time went by.
Okay. I don't know how to assist you, I guess, is I don't know what, it's not. So like the state maintains the paving and the ditching on Elm Street and on 160. So anything that was done, whether it was this time or whether it was a previous time, it would be the main DOT that would have done that work.
Well, that culvert, I can understand why they had that done. They caused a lot of problems. And I can understand why they did it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those disparate impacts. I don't know if it's, or not disparate, but unintended impacts. And so I don't know, I don't know if the right party for you to.
Lots are quite extensive, pages and pages and pages.
Oh, yeah, that's typical with
But
subdivisions.
they're all approved by Alfred. They're all deeded,
Yep.
and they should be respected, and they're not.
Well, so if you have, I know this because I've been looking to update in my own subdivision, is that any changes that you want to make to your subdivision rules, you have to go through a lawyer, you have to go through, and you have to get everyone that's within that subdivision agreement in order to make changes to any of those rules. And if they're in declarations or anything like that, then they're much more difficult to change, because legal declarations are sort of a step above sort of just your ground level rules.
So I have to hire a lawyer.
I mean, I would certainly consult one and see what they say. I know that's what I had to do in order to get.
They went back 50 years.
Yep.
And I said, well, I used you before, I have an issue here, we don't do that anymore,
Gotcha. Yep.
because we knew someone somewhere. I know how it works.
Any questions pertinent to the floodplain management ordinance updates? Yes.
I had heard that FEMA was changing how they determine if something is a floodplain or not, so that, like on the ocean, you actually may have to be further from it, whereas inland, you actually may be able, to be closer to the water source rather than further north.
Yeah, so that was the big change to the FEMA maps. They actually had an issue rolling out the maps in time because all the coastal maps changed so significantly. And I think that's probably happening because of the storms that we've seen, over the last 5-10 years, where they've gotten so severe and have actually, pushed the sea quite a bit more inland. So yeah, I know that they have moved that line, that sort of 100-year line, further inland in the coastal areas. I hadn't heard anything about inland areas kind of being able to get closer. I know that they're a little more conservative than they had been in the past about some of those. So, but yeah, I hadn't heard that part. I was looking quickly to see if there was any updates to any of the definitions.
I heard that from a good source. that
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Well, I don't doubt it. There's,
Changing inland in favor of being able to be closer to the floodplain, which could,
yeah, yeah. I could see that. I could definitely see that on like lakes and ponds and things like that, being able to. I would caution myself if I was near a river personally, but given the amount of snow runoff, given the amount of snow we've been getting lately. Yeah, I don't see anything changed in their definitions in the ordinances, but it certainly, that's wouldn't be captured there necessarily.
FEMA would be sending the town that information eventually.
Yeah, so they just recently updated their maps. There was no change for no visible change for our area in terms of what was covered and prior to and now. And I know that they were struggling to get because with us being in York County, our call that we had with the state was with, all these different coastal Maine towns. And so that was the concern, was them being able to get the new maps in the hands of those towns prior to July 16th, when this has to be in place. So I believe they've got them out now, but again, I haven't looked up the maps for Kittery, York yet, but I know ours was out and there was no change.
So is the public gonna vote?
Yeah, so that's the next step in the process. That's is on, was that Thursday, 27th?
27th.
June 27th, next Thursday. There's gonna be a special town meeting. Both of these will each be their own article, and then you'll have additional articles the selectmen are putting on for other items that needed to get approved. And so all those will be voted on at that meeting. Yep. Certainly hope so. Yeah, and for those out watching this days later, I'll have them email planning at Parsons Field, and if you have any questions, we can certainly attempt to answer. But the LD 2003, there's lots of explainers out there and sort of what the law means, and what the changes mean. And like we said, and like Jen said, we tried to make it as best we could, sticking to the law, but still trying to keep it so that it kept our rural nature of the town. Any other questions for anyone in the public or board? Hearing none, I will adjourn the public hearing. Thank you all for attending.
Very much.